and it's out near the stanchion again. Like it's out there. And I'm like, oh no.
It's
and
like,
it's
thanks, kid.
Yeah, I'm like,
you handed me a speck of pepper.
I know. I'm like,
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Aviation RcNoob podcast. My name is Joe.
And I am Matt.
And tonight, this evening, whenever, this morning, we're talking about wings. We're on episode 84. We're calling it Winging It, the highs and lows of wing placement. You like that?
Yeah.
All right.
I couldn't have done it better if I had tried myself.
I appreciate it. We're going to be talking about wings and wing placement. I guess specifically the latter half. Did some looking, did some reading, and a little bit of verification. So hopefully 90%-ish of what I say can largely be taken to the bank. But we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it is build season, right? In the Northern Hemisphere, we are going into the winter time.
Not yet. It's perfect fly season.
Oh, it is perfect fly season right this couple weeks.
Yeah.
We got maybe the rest of this month, but this is also where you go, all right, I better get my stuff ready to do some building. So while you're building and you're creating new craft, especially if you're doing something that isn't a scale craft, it's nice to kind of have this in mind, right? You know, where do I want to put this wing based on what I want the plane to do, right? And it kind of applies to your scale model. If you are doing a scale model, it is, I don't know, I always like to look up the history of the planes. That's kind of why we do this segment on the show. But also trying to think about, like, why did the designers make this plane the way they made it? Right? What mission did it originally have, and why were these choices made? And I think hopefully this topic might enlighten you as to why, sometimes it's really obvious and sometimes it's not. So why were certain parts of the design of the plane made? Mm-hmm. So we'll go through it.
Well, before we get into all that, let's go ahead and hit on the community stuff before we talk about what we've been doing, or
that's fine by me. Yeah, let's do it.
Well, first off, we want to, as always, thank our patrons.
Thanks, patrons.
For supporting us. And a certain individual that Matthew and I both got reached out by. Matthew signing a heart.
I can't even do it right. I'm clearly not that generation. Go ahead.
You're trying. It's okay.
I'm trying, though. Yeah. My heart goes out to all you patrons.
Yes, to all our patrons. We appreciate each and every one of you because you help and you do keep the lights going, which allows Matthew and I not to have to worry about it, and we can just keep doing what we're doing. If you're interested in becoming a patron, feel free to head on over to patreon.com/aviationrcnoob.com. And again, we did have somebody specific who reached out to us, and bought my mic. You know who you are. Thank you very much. Build parties. We have one last night.
As of the airing of this show, once again, we timed it just... ultimately, this show was originally supposed to air a week ago, which was hopefully going to give you enough time. Thank you, Joe. Yeah. Remind me tomorrow to make a post on Facebook and in here to remind everybody there's the build night going on at the end of the week.
Okay, I'll try to do that.
Yeah, it's just I'll try to do it, but if I have other people telling me, I might have a chance of getting it done. But yeah, so it was last night. I hope everybody had a great time.
Great time, guys. All right, we're out here. Yeah, so we were originally going to be last week, but I was working on a thing that we'll talk about in a minute. And we were going to record, and then somebody else popped in, and I was getting advice and feedback and thoughts and this and that, and the conversations just went forever, and it was awesome stuff.
Yeah, it was a really good conversation. And by the time we realized what time it was, we went, we're going to have to put this off till next week. Yeah. We started comparing schedules and realizing it probably really wasn't going to be a good time because I had the scout outing weekend. So I was out of the house for most of the weekend and or exhausted. And, so we really didn't have a good time until about now.
Yes. And then you're looking at some dates in November. You're saying the 17th night or the 18th day. I may or may not. I'd have to double check the calendar to see if I'm in town that weekend.
Okay. I just wanted to get something on the calendar. Either I think I had possibly some work, during that week before. I might have to be out somewhere for work, but yeah, let's just plan on the 17th and we'll adjust as we go.
Yeah, just keep an eye out. And if it changes or if our plans on that changes, well, then you'll see that. Especially if you're a Discord member, Matt's gotten pretty good about making the events in the Discord server. So you can always go up and click the little event button up top and have a peekaboo. If you haven't joined the Discord, there's your cue.
Join the Discord. It's where we all hang out and say hi.
Yeah, we've had a couple people join recently.
Yeah, it's exciting. Hey, by the way, if you're new, welcome aboard.
We know who you are, and we're glad to see you.
Yeah.
And then the thing that pushed us off last week is sort of the last thing we're going to talk about here. A thought that I had, and I talked to Matthew about a community event, something like a fly-in, but over a period of time. The concept being sort of like a fly-a-thon or just a group fly, or the idea being we're in that season. Now, I don't know if we're still going to be in that season when we get all this fleshed out, but
then it'll be the beginning of the next fly season.
Oh, that's still a ways off, but
I know.
It'll be perfectly primed for that, though, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I had the thought of, well, we're moving into the season where it's not so daggum hot outside, and we can get out and enjoy it. And there's still the weekends, so there's that. But the idea being to encourage us all, including me, because I haven't been out flying in a while, to go out and fly, ideally more than we would have. And the idea was to track the flight time, self-reported somehow, and then as a community, see how much flight time we could log. And without going too deep into it, I started spending some time thinking about how to do that, and I came about the idea of, I can say, a mobile app that we could use as a community to log that information. So we could all put it in the same place, and then we could sort of see as a community how we're doing. How many hours as a community we've logged, and do it for a thing. And then as thoughts around that continued on, Matthew can tell you that the gears in my head have been running pretty wide open. And so
you keep shoveling coal into that engine fast as you can.
As fast as I can. So there's other ideas and thoughts that are being sort of tacked on peripherally, and that I'm working on. So that functionality is not yet a thing. It's close. But there's some other things that I'm working on in line with that, and then for perhaps some other benefit, some other use, so that it can hopefully be useful and beneficial for people outside of just, saying, hey, I went out and flew. So I don't want to say much more than that, just because I don't want to make any promises that I very, very well may not be able to keep. It's all a hopeful at this point. those who have seen some of what I'm working on and have offered feedback and ideas and guidance. Thank you so much to you guys. Especially, I want to give a direct shout out to Jeff Gooey Flyer, who has been instrumental in me getting my head wrapped around certain parts of the back end of this thing.
Hey, welcome, Jeff, and thanks a lot. He's relatively new on Discord.
And Larry was new too.
Okay, well, I mean, there's a bunch of other
we've
new guys.
We've had a
just noting, like, you joined our forum just in time for Joe to go, hey, I can pick your brain. This is great.
Excellent. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's about all I want to say on that front, and not take too much time with it. But keep your eye out for things coming down the pipeline in that regard. And without continuously plugging the Discord, those in Discord tend to have a chance to be able to drop in on me while I'm working on this. So,
hey, you know what? I have an idea.
What's your idea?
If you're a listener and a Discord user, go into podcast ideas and write a little 1-second review that you think might help people understand why we get so excited about the Discord. Like, why did you come? Why do you stay? And we'll just read them. And then now it's not our words, it's your words.
And you're saying what channel?
The podcast ideas channel.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That is down towards the bottom, I think.
Yeah,
No, podcast topic ideas. It's right there at the top.
It's the one I want people to engage with a lot. We need help. No, honestly, if you do have ideas, though, we'd love to hear them.
We've had a fair number of ideas put in there recently.
Yeah, it's good. I'm excited to see that too. But we'll always welcome more. So if you got ideas, put them in there, and we'd love to turn those into reality if we can. Okay. Speaking of turning into reality.
Yeah, I was about to say we're squirreling all over the place. Let's
no, it's great.
Let's do the thing.
Okay, which thing are we doing?
The thing.
Which
you
thing?
set it up.
Hold on. I'm in the middle of doing things that I shouldn't be doing. Hold on.
You set it up. I was just kind of lobbing it over to you so you could spike it.
But what we do is we always do is we start talking about our journey. What have you been up to, Joe?
Oh, you're bunting it back to me. I got it.
Yeah. Or would you like me to talk about what I've been up to?
I got it. So the man cave has made fairly significant progress. Got the webcam on, Matt can see. So I think the last time we spoke, I had pretty much just painted the walls and was working on taping off the trim. So all the trim has been painted. And I have the other section of my desk brought in here. And it is rightfully covered in hobby stuff. I'm showing Matt on the webcam, but he is looking at things he's not supposed to be looking at.
The problem is when you were trying to take an event and you open up the little window, it blocks everything. So go ahead.
That'll do it.
Now I can see you.
Hi. We're just in a mood this evening. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so the hobby desk, as it were, is brought in here. I need to bring other things from around the house back in here. I've moved a lot of stuff in here and just kind of piled it on the desk for later sorting and organizing, but I do have a hobby bench. There are planes still strewn about that need to get moved back in here, and I'm going to have to figure out a mounting mechanism for these. I think I'm going to take, like, you've got those stands with a PVC pipe, but I'm probably going to mount those to the wall.
Most people do. I guess I just wasn't certain that where I was going to put them, I needed to keep them.
Right.
So
especially
I made a
given
stand
where they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Like, because they were in the dining room and then they're in the other front room, and then I moved one upstairs. Like, I'm glad I made them portable, but that's not necessarily the best choice for everybody.
Yeah. Well, so I'm probably going to make those wall mounted and be able to hold a fair number. And then, and then this side project I've been on constantly, late into the nights and having a blast with as it racks me. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. How about you?
I have been catching up on something I shouldn't be while I'm doing a recording the podcast. No,
What you doing, Matt?
well, I'm doing it. I'm like, wait a second. Why would I wait? I can post it right now because I thought you'd have a little bit more to say then. Anyway, but that's okay.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing the same thing you are, right? I am setting up my shop, and over the last couple weeks, I've managed to get order some shelves and some bins. So I've got shelves up now. I've got bins. All of the boxes that were just jumbled across, and you remember seeing it, jumbled across that whole room, and you've seen them where they were before, which is even worse.
Everywhere.
They are now on the shelves.
Oh.
And they are organized. There is the only box on the floor is the second build desk. So I'm going to put two together so I have a nice wide, kind of 5 foot long by 3 foot wide section of table. And then I'm gonna figure out how I want to set it up exactly, and then I'll be able to put maybe one of our flags in the backdrop, maybe put logo, some lighting, get it to be a little bit more camera friendly. I found my an old USB camera, so I should be able to kind of hook that up to do an overhead shot, and then set a better place to be able to kind of hook up my computer and do some filming. It'll help me do build videos. It'll help us do, if we ever choose to do any live events, either through Discord or through YouTube. It'll help with the build parties, I think. And it'll help if we start doing designs, building, filming.
The build process.
Filming the build process.
Yeah, because you'll be able to have like a mounted overhead camera.
Yeah, an overhead cam. I'll have like one or two other spots that I'll have cameras.
You know, it'll be really cheeky.
What's that?
If when you mount that up there, if you subtly, on whatever, I guess, mat you have there, just kind of trace the outer limits of what the camera can see. And then you'll always know when you're within the field of view of the camera.
Somebody's thinking. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I had that thought at one point before, but I had long since forgotten that, so I appreciate it.
Look at us being big brain.
No, I know. Thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate it. I'll have to do the same. It sounds like you were part of a stage crew at some point. Because they always marked off, hey, this is where the limits of where people see, and this is where you need to stand because this blocks that and all that.
I just specifically remember the problem that you had with the last build log
video.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Actually,
I appreciate it.
Without going too far off track, my wife was doing a virtual, almost like Teams meeting type Magic the Gathering game.
Okay.
With her and some friends, where they were all playing Magic remotely, but they all had their webcams turned on, but instead of the webcams looking at them, they had the webcams pointed down at their play surface, and they would lay out their deck. So they were doing like a big multiplayer, free for all.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those games that is the way they've got it set up. It's really hard to do online in any reasonable way. Well, and that's one of the. I always thought about that. If I could, if you could just see what I'm doing, it's no different than we could all play wherever we're at.
It was not the best setup, but I took a webcam, set it a certain way, and then on her desk with pencil drew the borders of the camera. So she had like this parabolic or whatever. No, that's not it, but rhombus kind of shape.
It's kind of a fisheye almost look kind of thing.
Yeah, that showed where her camera visibility was. So that's also where I got that idea.
Okay.
So she knew where to put her cards.
Look at you being a really good husband.
Yeah, she just dealt with me.
You just love that woman. Right?
Don't tell her.
Right. All right. Okay, so that being said, that's I've been making progress with that. And I have a place I can build now, so I've been kind of working back at a project that came up, and I've been also trying to figure out. So the next step is I need to figure out what containers I want to buy, right? Because there's a plethora of ways to organize this thing, this beast. and none of them jump out as the best way.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, and it's not the cheapest thing to buy like 60 containers, or whatever it is you need to kind of. I know it's surprising, but I want to have clear containers because that way I can see it from the side. So I'm going to have to pick up a bunch of those, which is fine. But once I do, I got to organize everything. So, and then start pulling out things out of, okay, all the props over here and all the tape over there, and, figure out how I want to set that stuff. And that's honestly pretty exciting, to do that part. It's nice to be able to be at that point too. So, but as I'm not quite there, anytime I try to build something, I'm like, oh, where did I put all that stuff?
Yeah, where did it go?
Where did I put? I know it's in one of these over. Wait, where did I put that? Anyway, so I've been doing a little bit of that. I've been trying very hard, resisting incredibly hard on building. However, there was an opportunity that came up recently, and I know I mentioned it before. I'm going to mention it again because it is still probably the biggest thing I've done so far, which is one of our friends and listeners, Muttley. He camped with us at the last couple flight fests. He's a guy you may know as the guy with the flying missile. Or
he really made a name for himself with that.
Yeah, he did, and he loves it. He always builds these crazy big projects, and they're a lot of fun. He'll build the 200% Betty bomber the year before. So this year he had some time in between things, and he decided to build a really cool project. And he reached out and said, I can't remember what I already said, so I'm just going to keep it vague. If I said it, you know what I'm talking about. But he said, I need a target. Can you design me? He goes, I'm thinking a Japanese torpedo bomber, the B5N Kate, which is the Nakashima, which is actually Nakajima is how it's typed out. But I heard it's commonly pronounced Nakashima B5N, and our designation and from America was called the Kate. And it's a torpedo bomber. So basically it's a very large wing, somewhat heavy load. I think it carried, and we'll get into some specifics later, but it basically carried one torpedo or a handful of bombs, and it was responsible for downing a great number of ships and was an important role in bringing America into World War II, as well as it played a very important role in the very beginning of the conflicts leading up to and including in early World War II. So a very pivotal aircraft for Japan, and it was a common target for what one of the things that that Mudley has put together. So he wanted something. The mission statement was, I want a big plane. He goes, I'm thinking somewhere on like 2 sheets of foam board, like 60 inches. I want it to be slow. I want it to be visible, and I want it to be easy to fly because I want to give it to my nephew. Or have him do the thing while we fly, but I want it to be shootable, I want to be able to have it be a good target. I said, okay, let's see what we can do. So I looked at a number there really aren't too many plans for this plane. It looks pretty much like a big cylinder with a tapered end and 2 big wings, like 2 big, somewhat tapered wings. Pretty straightforward. It houses 3 people. We'll talk about that more later. So I went to work, and over the last couple weeks, I had the design done about 2 weeks ago, but for whatever reason, between life and stuff and being busy or tired, or both, it took me almost 2 weeks to build it.
Wow.
But now that I've built it, this past weekend, I got a chance on Sunday to go and maiden it. And it was a very short maiden, but it was a very I know, but it was a very successful maiden. Okay. So I built a fuselage kind of boxy. It's got a round cowl. It's got a standard, I'll call it flight test style, crease fold over wing, but the underside only goes out like halfway out the wing, not even, right? It gives the dihedral that's set in the plane. And I didn't build a cockpit. I just put a profile for the cockpit. It was literally a single plate for, in the shape of the cockpit. So nothing fancy. And I couldn't really get the right size of roundel for the wing, but I took a piece of my widest red tape and drew out 2 circles real quick and kind of plopped them on the wing tops, like halfway down the ailerons where they belong. And I was like, well, at least I will tell top from bottom, And so I went out to the field. I threw it to the beans on the other side of the field, like away from where everybody was flying. It was pretty busy that day. It was a beautiful day. And I tossed it, and where I thought the CG was, it was gliding perfect. I was like, I nailed the CG. I did it. Nice. So I was like, all right. And then I gave it one more toss. I gave it like an extra oomph just to see kind of how it handled. And it still did really well. So I'm like, okay, that gave me a lot of like all the jitters. I'm like, okay, I feel confident. So I had, there's a couple guys at the field, and I asked one of the guys, I said, hey, would you mind launching this? It's a maiden flight, and I'd like to have my hands on the controls. I'm just going to, if you hold on to it, I'm going to punch it to full throttle, and you give it a heave, and away we go, And he looked at me, and he's like, no way. Nope. I'm not being part of that.
Really?
I'm like, okay. And it wasn't one of the guys that I've seen around a bunch. He's not somebody I saw a bunch, but most people can kind of heave craft in the air. Fortunately for me, Amy was with me because she was going to film it for me. And then she's like, well, I'll just heave it, and then I'll have the camera ready, and then I'll just film, it flying around. Well, she gave it a good heave-ho, full throttle, and off it went, and it was going really good. And then the nut came spinning right off because it's a reverse prop. Putting all the torque on the right thing, and it was undoing that prop nut right away. Sure enough, that came off. It basically got all the way out to the edge of the beans on a 45. So it was out a little ways. It got some altitude, and the prop came spinning off, and it kind of almost like helicoptered back. And then it landed in the field. We were able to actually find it. We were able to find the nut. We were able to find the little washer, the little blue washer that comes with I know. Because it's like a blue aluminum, I guess. Yeah, but they came off early. It took a while for the prop to come off of the motor itself. Well, anyway, it had gained enough altitude, enough height where I was like, okay, well, let me try to glide it around. I couldn't quite get it back to the field, but I did land it I had full control the whole way because it glides well. And I was able to bring it down on the beans soft as you please. I mean, it took us like an hour of just kind of on and off searching for the nut to find it. Yeah, okay. I had to go drop kids off at a thing. And then when I came back, Logan had lost he's been flying a little Cessna with the stabilization, and he's at this point, I don't even bother with him. Oh, yeah, you're good. You got this. I guess there was enough. Well, yeah. And he's doing good. But there was a little bit too much wind, and it brought it way out in the beans. And he goes, Dad, here, you deal with it. I'm like, what? I look out there, and it's out near the stanchion again. Like, it's out there. And I'm like, oh, no. And it's coming down towards the horizon. And I'm like, I get hold of it, and I give it some throttle. And, of course, I can't tell orientation at that point. It's so far out there.
It's and like, it's thanks, kid.
Yeah, I'm like,
you handed me a speck of pepper.
I know. I'm like, I can't. And then Amy's like, it's probably just sitting right on top of the beans. I'm like, it is, but the beans are already up to my shoulder. I don't have an angle, like, and they're angry beans. They're like hardy now. Now they're actually actively grabbing your feet and your legs. And anyway, so she, when I came back, she said something. She's like, you could at least look, So I walk out there and I walk back. And when I come back, I didn't find his plane, which really was a bummer. But I did look on the ground, and sure as not, I find that nut right there at my feet. And she's like, holy cow, I can't believe you found it. It was like the one missing piece. It was like the coup de grace. It was great. We were able to kind of, I call that, while short, but a wild success. So I've since put on a standard propeller, 10x4.5 propeller on it. And I've cinched down the nut really good now. Just double check that I did. I felt like I did before, but maybe not. So now it's ready for the maiden. And today I had work assignments that were kind of staggered enough where I couldn't really get out before I had to do all the parent things. So it is ready to go. And I think I'm going to go tomorrow morning. I should have a pretty good window. I got a bunch of weird, another set of weird times to have to be at meetings and stuff for work. So I'm just kind of shifting my work hours around. That leaves me an opportunity mid-morning. So I should be able to get out there and give it an initial throw and get some video on it. So but based on that initial throw, I think it meets, like, it glides really well. It doesn't go fast, right? But it's fully maneuverable. It's really easy to fly, and it looks great. I made a little torpedo to put on the bottom, which is like a PVC tube with a kind of a profile end and front.
Okay.
So that way it looks, and I'm going to kind of, I don't know how I'm going to attach it to the bottom, but I'm going to set it up on the bottom somehow, glue it on, and then put some landing gear on it. I think I'm going to finish that off tonight so that I'll be ready to go tomorrow. But yeah, those are the last two final touches, and I'm ready to go. So I'll probably end up putting together, I already have plans, so I'm going to finish adjusting those and release those. I'm going to make a bunch of copies for Muttley when he comes through, which would be really awesome. So that way he has, I think I'm going to build one for him, and then I'm going to have another like pile of, kind of like we did with the Spitfires, is hand him a pile of plane stuff. And say, hey, when you want to build more, when you crash it, here's a bunch. It should be quick and easy.
Right.
Yeah. And then that way he can have a bunch of fun. He's going up to his father's to hang out with his nephew and his brother, or I think his sister, who visited us out of the field. We met them all. So, yeah, so he's going to have a good time there. Looks like I've got about a solid week and a half before that happens. So yeah, I'm busy enough, but not as busy as I like.
Yeah. Okay.
It's been good. And what I've been looking at getting myself set up with flying lessons again.
Oh, that's right. How's that going?
As I expected, a couple hiccups. I still have to go through and just double check my medical, but I'm pretty sure I'm almost up on my medical, so I need to go get another physical again. Which it's what it is. It's not a big deal. But I need to have that done, and I need to get myself set up with flying school again. So there's always a little hiccup. But once I'm set up again, I should start being able to schedule myself some flights, and I'll get back to it. While in the meantime, I've been studying the flight stuff and trying to get myself poised to pass the written exam.
Well, good. Well, when you go for your medical, be careful what you say to your doctor and how you go about saying it.
Okay. Like what are you thinking?
Well, I went to see my doctor today for my annual.
Uh-oh.
And he was, he's a good guy, but he would give me a hard time about some extra padding I put on in the last year.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, and he's like, I bet when we pull your A1C, it's going to be... And I said, excuse me, Doc, are you calling me fat? And he said, yes, I am. Oh.
Yeah, that'll be pretty direct and blunt.
I think he's getting that way with me.
Yeah, that's all right.
Nah, it's good stuff. I like him. I love my doctor.
Yeah, I mean, that he's really only looking out for your health.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
He wants to see you come back year after year.
Well, I guess we can decide later whether to take this out or not. But, speaking about doctors real quick, because I went to see him today, that I have sleep apnea.
Right.
I never called him within that 90-day window after I do my sleep study that I was supposed to, but I went ahead and got my CPAP and got it all hooked up and such. But I did see him today, which is like 6 months later. We looked at my stats on my app for tracking the usage. But he let me know that he about fell out when he saw my sleep score or my my sleep results. He said, "You're in the top 5 of people I've ever seen with sleep apnea." He said,
"What do you mean?
Like the top 5 worst in his 20 years."
Oh wow.
Yeah. He said, "You might be top 2. There might be a guy that was worse than you. I'm not sure, but you're definitely top 5." I was like, "Daggum."
Hold back a little.
I mean, it's fine. I sleep a lot better now, so that's good.
Yeah, it's a good thing you went. Right?
And if we do include this for whatever reason, if you do have sleep apnea, get it taken care of. You'll feel better, really. And it's healthier for you. This was the first time my blood pressure was in the 120s since, I don't know, I moved out of home.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it's been borderline high even on medication. So.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. Get yourself taken care of. It's important.
Yeah, that's our public service time. Hey, speaking of, did you know originally, it's pretty close. Originally, our episode is going to release once again close to Halloween.
I did not.
Now it is. I mean, it wasn't, but now it is.
Oh, dang. We keep doing that.
I know. I'm just letting you know.
I mean, if you think about it, doing an every other week podcast, we got a 50-50 chance.
We do.
As long as it doesn't fall smack dab on a Wednesday. In which case we're like, well.
No. I mean, we're not recording on Halloween. We're recording 1 week specifically before.
Well, I know.
So it's going to come out the weekend of Halloween.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so,
just public service announcements.
Yeah. If you guys happen, I'm not saying we'll have enough for an episode or anything, but if you guys happen to have had any scary stories, hobby related, since the last time we did one of these, scary situations, scary moments, hopefully that you came through okay.
Things that we can learn from. Absolutely.
Let us know. We'll talk about it.
Yep. Very good.
All right.
Well,
I'm about to say, this has been a long intro. Let's go.
Well, there's a lot of different things to take care of. Anyway, so let's move on to the history. I put together, as I always do when I'm coming up with a new design, I like to immerse myself a little bit into the history of the plane that I'm designing, whether I'm designing as an RC plane. And so I chose this week to talk about the Nakajima B5N. I think oftentimes it's the B5N2 is what you'll see in pictures. The Kate. So it is a Japanese torpedo bomber or Japanese bomber, but basically a carrier-based torpedo bomber. So it has folding wings. It carried its primary fit out was a torpedo, and it was part of the Imperial Japanese Navy for most of World War II. I can't even speak English. That's okay. Maybe I'm turning Japanese. It also served as a high-level bomber, so it would basically...
I'm becoming Japanese.
I really think so. All right, so it was substantially faster and more capable than most of its allied counterparts, and like the Douglas TBD Devastator monoplane and the British Fairey Swordfish or the Fairey Albacore torpedo biplanes. Because remember, it was in the beginning of the war, and most of the planes at that time were either biplane, and the rare one was a monoplane, right? Mm-hmm. Which, so those were nearing their obsolescence by 1941. So same with the Kate was similar as well. But nevertheless, it operated throughout the whole war, and due to delayed developments of its successor, the B6N, which is essentially an updated version of the Kate, really. If you look at the B6N, it's not terribly different. I mean, there's definitely certain features that make it a successor for sure. But yeah, so because that took a little bit longer, the B5N was kept in service a little bit longer than expected. and in the early start of the Pacific War, when flown by well-trained IJN air crews, and as part of a well-coordinated attack, the B5N achieved particular successes in the battles of Pearl Harbor, Coral Sea, Midway, and Santa Cruz Island. So those are very big, pivotal battles in World War II. For the America, we don't ever seem to forget Pearl Harbor for good reason. It's the event that catalyzed us to join the war efforts. So, yeah, it played a big part. So the initial model, the B5N, let's see. It was a carrier-based, just like I mentioned, it was carrier-based aircraft. Occasionally, it was land-based as a bomber. It carried a crew of a pilot, a navigator, bombardier, observer, and a radio operator gunner. With most of the multi-seat aircraft of the IJN, an individual bomber commanded by the senior ranking, an individual bomber was commanded by the senior ranking crew member aboard, which could be the observer rather than the pilot.
Really?
Yeah. So I guess if you were in charge, you could choose. So it first saw action in the Second Sino-Japanese War in 1938. It was basically a war with, with Japan, between Japan and China. The updated B5N2 played a major role in the attack on Pearl Harbor. One of them carried Mitsuo Fuchida, the commander of the attack, with one high-level bomber from the carrier Haryu. I'm probably butchering these names, so please forgive me. Credited with sinking the American battleship, the Arizona. The B5N2 torpedo bombers also sunk the battleships West Virginia, California, Oklahoma, and Utah. 5 torpedo bombers were shot down in the first wave. Apart from this raid, the greatest successes of the B5N2 were the key roles it played in sinking the United States Navy aircraft carrier Lexington and the Battle of the Coral Sea, and the aircraft carrier Hornet at the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands, and disabled the aircraft carrier Yorktown at the Battle of Midway, later sunk by the Japanese submarine I-168.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look that one up.
Very, very creative names. I'm just kidding. Let's see. The torpedo bombers were normally performed. They normally perform coordinated attacks on enemy aircraft carriers with Aichi D3As, which they're dive bombers. Ideally, the dive bombers would help suppress the ship's anti-aircraft fire, which improved the chances of the success of the slow-flying torpedo bombers. During the Battle of the East Solomon Islands, the Eastern Solomons, the IJN tried to minimize losses to the torpedo bombers and initially sent in only dive bombers to attack and cripple the U.S. carriers for the subsequent torpedo strikes. This, however, proved unsuccessful as the torpedo bombers did not launch until the battle was over.
And we should clarify the IJN is the Imperial Japanese Navy.
Yes, I thought I identified that earlier, but maybe not.
I may have missed it. I just want to be sure.
All right, good. Thank you. Let's see. It served as the basis for the following design. The B5N was the basis for the B6N, which eventually replaced it in the frontline service, but that was nearing the end of the war. The B5N continued to fly in secondary roles, like most World War II aircraft that started in the beginning. They served as trainers, target towing, anti-submarine warfare, and some of them were used later. Were equipped with early radars and magnetic anomaly detectors.
Ladder.
B5Ns.
Ones that were used for the ladder purpose.
Not later?
Nope, ladder, which would be anti-submarine warfare.
Yeah. So the ones that were used near the end of the war had these. Yep. Thank you for the clarification.
Latter purpose.
The latter purpose.
The latter purpose, which would be the last purpose being anti-submarine warfare. Those were equipped with early radars and magnetic anomaly detectors for picking up the submarines below the surface of the water, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, because that's how else are you going to find them, right? unless you happen to be flying over top right as they surface, right?
Mm-hmm.
B5Ns were also used as bombers during the unsuccessful defense of the Philippines in October 1944. They suffered severe losses. Later in the war, they were used for kamikaze attacks.
I was wondering that, and I did a little side looking, because when I saw that plane in the picture that you've got up there, like that looks like the plane you see in any video about a kamikaze, but then doing a little looking, it sounds like when it came to the kamikazes, they were just throwing whatever they could at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to remember, these were old craft that were supposed to be replaced. So if you're going to throw a plane at it, throw one that you can fly really high until it's time, I guess. So,
was this plane known for being easy to fly?
I didn't notice a lot of pilot, anecdotes or anything like that. There weren't a lot of stories of pilots, at least that I found. I wasn't looking terribly hard.
Yeah.
I was looking for general, like, hey, do all these stories about what they accomplished, do they, corroborate and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't hear it. Sometimes they have a pilot will say, like, oh yeah, this is, my experience. I imagine it was pretty easy.
Well, I asked because with it being when they were using the kamikaze pilots, once they got rolling and kind of went through their initial supply is a terrible word, personnel. They were basically just recruiting guys, giving them enough stick time to be able to fly to things, and then sending them off. So it couldn't have been too terribly bad of a plane to fly.
No, I imagine it was probably relatively simple to a degree. But I mean, when you're looking at each of these three guys carried more than one role during the missions, right? The one guy was navigator, bombardier, and observer, as well as the other guy was a radio operator and gunner.
I suppose if they had all three seats filled during a kamikaze mission.
I doubt that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, other than maybe needing a radio operator, but I'm sure you can do that with just the pilot. I'm sure there's a radio that you could operate from up front for just basic communications. You just weren't getting some of the more complex stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, if anybody knows, that'd be great to know. Yeah, if you know anything about this aircraft that we haven't covered, please let us know. Reach out in the podcast notes or podcast ideas. I think that
it's the show notes channel.
Yeah, there you go. Show notes or show comments. Let us know what you can tell us more about the aircraft, because it's a pretty interesting one, because of the 1,150 produced, none of them survived intact. Period.
At least they're not known to have survived intact.
No, there's only two that were partially recovered, B5Ns, and neither of them are anywhere near airworthiness. As a matter of fact, one of them looks like basically the first quarter of the aircraft from behind the engine to like mid-wing, or maybe a little bit past the wing, and then like the wing segment out to where it folds on one side, and just a tattered remain on the other. And it looks like a mess. It looks like they probably recovered it from the bottom of the ocean in part, or yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if it got chewed up with flak.
I mean, who knows? Again, without really kind of going into some better, because the picture isn't really that good either. So I was like, oh, that's not terribly. If you look up the B5N, you'll see some, traditional photos of it, and then you'll see one or two like it looks like they just pulled it out of the ocean or something. So we'll go through some stats. It's 33 foot 10 inches long. It is 50 foot 11 inch wingspan, which is a much longer wingspan than the length than typically. So obviously it's looking for a high payload. Has a height of 12 feet. Its wing area is 406 square feet. Its empty weight is about 5,000, a little over 5,000 pounds. Its gross weight is 8,000, almost 400 pounds. Its max takeoff weight was 9,000 pounds. It had a Nakajima B5N 11 14-cylinder air-cooled radial piston engine. and it produced about 1,000 horsepower for takeoff. And it had like 970 horsepower at 3,000 meters, or about 10,000 feet. It had 3-bladed constant speed metal propellers. It could cruise, let's see, its maximum speed was 235 miles an hour at 11,000 feet, or almost 12,000 feet, which, if you think compared to some of the fighters and some of the other aircraft of the day, in the beginning of the war, that was on par. But when you get, a couple years in, though, that was a very slow aircraft.
Right.
Because Spitfires were coming close to 400 miles an hour, weren't they? I think they were.
I'll find out for you, but the Spitfire, I don't think was the primary Pacific.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't actually the one that was in that theater, but I mean, just compared to the aircraft of those times, you just note that the speeds moved up significantly.
So the Spitfire's top speed was 369.
Okay.
The P-30, the P-38 light.
Yeah, that one was. It was in the theater for sure.
I misclicked. P-38 Lightning would get up to 443 miles an hour.
Yeah,
that was that dual engine combat concept.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, anyway. So, so you can tell, like, it's definitely a much slower plane compared to the craft of the later half of the war. The range was 608 miles. It went about 160 miles an hour, or 140 knots at cruise. It, if you basically load it up with fuel, it could go 1,200 miles. The service ceiling was 27,000 feet. Rate of climb was 1,280 feet per minute, which, I mean, that's not terribly fast. It's not terribly slow either. I think if you look at a number of the, I'll call it common commercial aircraft, they just today, like if you're flying a Cessna and that kind of stuff, and some of the other sportier aircraft, that's about where they get. Time to altitude was almost 8 minutes. And then it had one gun, one Type 99 machine gun, RU. Basically had there's 7.7 millimeter machine gun. And let's see, it either carried one 1,760 pound bomb or 800 kilogram bomb. It was or one Type 91 torpedo. No, I'm sorry. That's how much the torpedo. That's how much explosive the torpedo had. 800. Oh my God, I can't even read my notes. One 800 kilogram Type 91 torpedo, or one similar size bomb, or two 550 pound bombs, or six 135 pound bombs. So yeah, it carried like 6 bombs, depending on what its mission was.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it had a purpose, and it seemed like it did it really well. I'm sure a large part of that had to do with the tactics used to allow it to deploy successfully, for sure. But
I'm looking at the weight limits on those bombs versus that torpedo it carries.
Mm-hmm.
So the number of bombs it carried must have been a hard point limitation, as opposed to actual lifting power. Because even the 6...
Yeah, remember the whole outer ends, like from the second bend, that's where the wings folded.
Oh, yeah, so it couldn't really have hard points out there.
Right, and it had the gears pulled in, right? It went from kind of the outboard point and rolled in.
Yeah,
so
I bet that torpedo
all those points
was
in the middle
slung directly underneath.
Yeah, it's just one big, it's as long as the cockpit, if not longer, and it goes from the cowl basically to the end of the cockpit.
Yeah, that torpedo is scary looking.
Yeah, it is. And they basically just drop it and line it up, drop it, and let it do its thing.
Yeah, I see it slung under the plane here.
It's no joke. That's pretty cool. So take a look if you haven't seen that plane. It was something I didn't even know anything about. I know, like, I'll call one of my weak points as far as aviation knowledge on planes is the Japanese Air Force, or the IGN, and some of their birds other than the Zero. And I think we covered the other one, and I can't think of the freaking name of it. The one that was basically, it lit on fire anytime a cock got hit with
Like,
I should know it because other than those two, like, I'm a big goose egg.
Yeah.
So shame on me. So it was really cool to research this and kind of get to know the history of this plane and its role in World War II. So, and what I've discovered and what I've noticed is that the Japanese made very tightly purposed machines. They were oftentimes very adept at what they did, but they were not a speck out past that.
well,
They weren't like they didn't seem like there were too many multi-purpose things. It was like, okay, we do this thing and we're going to do it well.
yeah, well, so I imagine, given the size of the nation, and just what they could field, that's probably a large part of what allowed them to, how you say, punch above their weight class.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, you
of
play to
no,
your strength.
yeah, that's of no disrespect. That's, just to say, wow, like, yeah, they hit hard for what you would think.
Yeah, exactly.
Because especially in the early days of World War II, I think a lot of their planes were really feared, weren't they?
Yeah, I believe so. So yeah, it's so interesting, Bert. Go take a look at it. I will hopefully have some pictures. I already put a picture or two on the general section, so you probably won't be able to find it by the time you hear this. But hopefully I'll have some links to some more information on it when I get it further along. And if you want to build one, you're welcome to. I'll certainly have some plans up for free, or you can just ask me and I'll send you a PDF.
Nice.
It takes 4 sheets of foam. 4 sheets of foam board.
That's a decent plane.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean it runs on a 10x4.5 prop. And you need an extra 2200 3-cell or 4-cell to balance it. Like one to run it, one to balance it.
Well, that's a lot of the. Isn't that true of a lot of planes of that era, though? Just because of like the design and such.
Yeah.
Like we don't have the nose weight that the
right. Yeah.
giant
a lot of the
combustion
engines,
motors had.
Right. A lot of the early engines weren't as weight efficient. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to tell you except that just when I was balancing, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a lot more weight. I'm going to have to put like a block of lead. Oh, you know what? I got a battery. Let's see where that goes. And started moving it around, and it's almost directly underneath. So it sits at the firewall and kind of sits right behind it. Both of them do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I could probably put them side by side, make a wider pod or whatever it is, but I designed it currently as a standard flight test power pod because that's what I had on hand. So, yeah, hopefully you find that fun. If you get a chance to fly it, let me know. I'd love to hear your experiences. And that leads us to our main topic. Speaking of wings.
Yeah. Let me resituate here.
High, low, right in between.
Now that my chair is done making all that noise. Yeah, I actually went. You're going to end up typing behind your. Oh wait, that picture's there because I had text selected. So you're going to type behind your picture.
Oh my god!
I am. Oh, I'm in a mood tonight. Sorry, guys.
You are.
All right. So, wings. When you're looking at a plane, I guess you can classify them into 3 positions: high, medium, or low, or high, mid, or low mount wings. We'll go through high, then medium, then low mounted wings and kind of talk about them. High wing aircraft, of course, wings are mounted on top of the fuselage. This ends up placing the weight of the fuselage under the wings, under the center of lift, which, coupled with dihedral really helps with the stability of the aircraft. And so you'll see a lot of your trainers will have those high wings. That tendency to want to return itself to what we'll call straight flight. So remember, you have straight and then you have level. Straight flight, typically we think of dihedral as leveling the plane back, straightening the plane back out. But that is true. But there's also an effect called the pendulum effect that comes into play with the high mount wings, and that is the weight of the fuselage hanging underneath the wings wants to pull those wings back into where the wings are level, kind of orientation. And then, of course, generally we'll have dihedral with those high mounted wings. I have seen where there's discussion of roll stability that is enhanced with high mount wings, but I think that's more to do with the dihedral angle that's generally associated with the high mount wings. I wasn't able to find any good evidence of that one. When you're talking about high mount wings, you tend to have better low visibility. That is to say, visibility when you're looking out the cockpit and looking down. So you look out and look down, you're able to see sort of out and down below the aircraft. There's not a wing blocking your way. However, it is above your head blocking your view, that the others don't have that problem with. So that high mount wing, the visibility allows for surveillance operations like search and rescue, or just general out and about. When you're taking a tour plane, or a flight where you're going out and seeing things, probably going to be in a high mount wing. High mount wings also offer ease of access, so you're not having to climb up onto a wing. I did fly in I want to say it was a Sandpiper one time that had more of a mid/low mount wing. And you do step up onto the wing of that as part of getting in, if I remember correctly. That's been years ago. But with more like your Cessna 172, you're stepping up, directly into the side of the fuselage. Under the wing, there may be like a kick down step or something to help you get in, but you're entering under the wing. And that also allows for easier cargo loading in some applications. I'm not going to put that as a general across the board. But you're not, you're not fighting around the wings. You can pass under the wings when you're moving cargo around the plane. And then two examples, because I wanted to look up a couple examples of each of these. The well-known Cessna 172, popular high wing design used for training, recreational flying, and light commercial operations due to its stable flight characteristics and good visibility below the aircraft. And then the Antonov AN-225 was introduced. Let's see. What was the world's largest cargo aircraft with a high wing design? I wonder if it still is. I'd have to check that later. So that's high wing. One thing I did look up.
Well,
okay, go ahead.
And I'm just looking at some of the other things of, like, when you're looking at commercial level aircraft, when you're looking at needing to maintain the engines, you want to make sure that you can get to them. So one of the reasons I think why commercial airlines have low wings, they're easy to get to and maintain the engines, as opposed to like the giant cargo carriers that have the high wing with the giant jets. A lot of that has to do with, the purpose of the aircraft, right? If you want, one of the reasons to have high wing is if you're a water lander, You need those engines and the props out of the way of any potential strikes. So that's why a lot of the watercraft you'll see have high wings.
Yeah, especially if their motors are mounted on the wings.
Mm-hmm.
I say that specifically because there are single engine civilian craft that'll have more of a front nose mounted motor, but they still land on water. Those floats just go way down because of it.
Mm-hmm. And then of course, when you're looking at like ground, when you're looking at like real aircraft, you're looking for ground clearance issues, and then absorbing forces. Right? If you have a low wing, the landing gear gets absorbed by the wing, which is already built for strength. So as opposed to putting it into the fuselage, which has to be reinforced. Right? Again, as a RC, it's not as critical, but it's something to consider.
Look at you.
I know. I have stuff to offer.
I appreciate it. So
continue on.
One of the things that I wanted to investigate when I was looking at this was I remember way, way back when we were talking, I think we were talking trim. I had stated uncertainly, but with a level of confidence that I should have had. That
Continue on.
I'd have laughed harder, but I was trying to suppress that cough.
We both had the confidence unreasonably.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I had stated that, and it was probably trim, that when you're with a high wing plane, when you throttle up, you're going to induce a up pitch situation.
Right.
Okay. Because of the thrust line being below the chord line. Although I didn't use that terminology at the time.
No, that's okay. We know what you meant.
But I did double check on that, and that does apply. That is a thing. So
it is. They oftentimes try to angle the motor to go through the center of gravity of the aircraft as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it still does induce a moment.
Yeah.
That's a positive rolling moment, which some wings also have that. So it actually exacerbates that problem, makes it worse. Sometimes it does the opposite. Depends on where you are. But yeah, if you have the fuselage and the motors on top of the wing, though, it does the opposite.
This is true. I didn't look at it
to a degree.
I didn't look at it from that perspective. Although I did investigate a little bit with a low wing aircraft. Low wing aircraft, when you throttle up, it can induce a bit of nose down pitch. But if the motors are above the wing line, above the chord. If the motors are below the chord, then you can still induce some up pitch. But I imagine with those planes, it's less noticeable. But then, like you say, they're also engineering the planes knowing that. So your chances of really noticing it more than you're noticing the up pitch due to increased lift is probably
So what that ends up actually probably having a bigger effect, and this isn't going to be anything that really affects RC, is so I'm following one of the ultralight designers on YouTube. He's kind of going through the full design, right? So one of the things he talks about in his series, he talks about, where do I want my wing? Do I want it low? Do I want it high? And you're going to cover some other things. We'll talk about some of those in a minute. But one of the things he talks about is when designing the actual airfoil, it has a moment pitch built in, right? Because of where the lift is in the wing and where the center of gravity or center of mass is in comparison to its center of lift, right? It's going to create a moment that's going to either turn the wing up or turn the wing down, right? If all the things are equal, it's going to start to turn. So a lot of times why you want to have things in most typical planes is if you gun it, you want to be able to pull it out of a dive. So naturally, when you go down, it speeds up, it creates more lift, and induces that positive moment, bringing your nose back out of that dive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's good design. You don't want to do the opposite, right? You don't want to make that dive even worse. That's potentially fatal, right?
Right.
So that's the way they pay attention. But when you're doing the design, the way you counteract that moment is the size of the tail. So the bigger the moment on that wing, and that could be also induced by the motor and your placement of high wing, low wing, or mid wing, is the tail sections are going to counteract that natural rotation. So it's important, if you want a small tail, which also creates less drag and it creates a more efficient plane,
Mm-hmm.
you want to have that moment be as close to zero as you can during cruise, and then you look at your different conditions. Anyway, he goes into a great deal of detail, and maybe we'll get into that some other day down the road. But it's excellent. It's an ultralight designer. If you look at that up on YouTube, you'll see his name is Leon. Yeah, take a look. I mean, he goes into great detail. It's really cool. But that has a play, right? Like that has a play on what wing you choose, where you place the wing, and it affects how big a tail you need to counteract those natural moments.
Yeah. Well, speaking
those
of
natural rotations.
Yeah, speaking of efficiency, we can talk about mid-wing. So
Okay, let's do it.
High mount wings, not as efficient generally, due to how they connect in and the drag characteristics. With your mid-wing placements, they can achieve better drag reduction because of how they can be shaped into the craft. And this, you'll also apply this to the low wing aircraft as well. But the way that they can shape it into, or shape the fuselage tying into the wings, they're able to reduce a lot of that excess drag. Mid-mounted wings, of course, mounted right in the middle of the fuselage, generally aligning closely with the center of gravity. The level of, I'm not going to necessarily say the front to back, because that has a point, but the chord line ideally being, is that the word I want to use? The chord line?
Yeah, it's the distance from the leading edge to the trailing edge. That's the chord.
What am I thinking then?
I don't know.
Anyway.
Is that what you're talking about?
No.
All right, go ahead.
Anyway, the wings being more in line with the center of gravity. Now, because they're more in line with the center of gravity, you tend to get a more stable flight characteristic. Sorry, a more neutral flight stability out of it. That pendulum effect that I was referring to earlier is not taking place because the weight is more evenly distributed below and above the wing. When we were talking about the pitching up of the high wing due to increased throttle, you're not going to get that generally with the mid wings, because the motor is generally more in line with the wings. Again, with mid-mount wings, you're picking up more aerodynamic efficiency, but you're trading that for that stability. It's not unstable, but when we think of, like, and the old fogey's going to be a bad example just because of, I guess let's say like
because that's a high wing.
Yeah, well, no, I was going to use the whole fogey as an example of a high wing, but it has very pronounced dihedral on the wingtips. Do we want to say the Cub? Cub doesn't have any dihedral, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. So if we want to take a Cub as an example, the pendulum effect would pull it generally back straight when the wings level due to the weight. A mid-mount wing tends to, when you induce a bit of roll, and then let go, it tends to stay there if it doesn't have any dihedral.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I call it the point and shoot aircraft. It's wherever you point it and leave it, it goes.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it goes.
Well,
And which is amazing for when you're doing acrobatics, when you're doing an air show and you're trying to do very specific maneuvers. Though the craft that you see doing 3D maneuvers and 3D stuff, that they're almost all of this mid-wing. You know, they have to. That's the only way they're going to be able to perform half the death-defying feats that they do.
Well, the Noob Wonder, while technically a high mount, it's so close.
No, that might as well be a mid-wing.
I mean, by that argument, it might as well be a low mount. It's so
just
close.
A wing.
Yeah, that's all it really is.
Wing.
But you know, the Noob Wonder, but also that came to mind, but also the FT Edge that I built.
3D plane,
Yep, that acrobatic plane. I had noticed when I took it out flying that generally when I yanked it to the side and then let go to stick, it kind of tended to stay like that. It didn't. I had to roll it back level, and it was always kind of bouncing it side to side to get it level, because it doesn't have that pendulum effect helping it.
Right, exactly.
Aerodynamic efficiency, the reduced drag can help lead to higher speeds and improve fuel efficiency. Generally, your acrobatics and racing planes will have the mid-wing design. And demonstration planes, the Extra 300 is a well-regarded aerobatic aircraft.
The good old Extra. Yep.
And the F-16 Fighting Falcon. I didn't think about it, but yeah, it's a mid-wing.
Yep. It's a mid-wing.
Yep.
As opposed to, I guess, would the Tomcat be a high wing?
The Tomcat?
Yeah.
No. F-14. Let me get a look at that. No.
I'm just saying.
No, Tomcat's still a mid.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The engines are slung underneath, and the Falcon's right in the middle.
Yeah, it's pretty much just the cockpit that's up above.
I mean, they're really streamlined anyway. That's splitting hairs almost on those, but as opposed to some of the earlier
that's sort of like the same.
Clear, you know,
that's like comparing the Noob Wonder. Like that's sort of the. All right.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, compared to like the Hercules, where it's like nope, or the Antonov, it's a big giant beefy wing right on top, a C-130, and it's a huge fuse underneath. You know, it's a very distinct difference. And then the Cade is a low wing, right? It's a low wing bomber. The wing is sitting underneath and the fuse is on top.
Well, speaking of low wings, the wings are mounted at the bottom of the fuselage. Go figure. And because of that, the opposite of that pitching motion with the thrust can be incurred if the motor is in line with the center of gravity. But if the motors are slung under the wings, then you may get some pitch up action, but that's not guaranteed. Especially if you have like the dihedral included with the wing, it may sort of just lift those motors up to a point that you don't really feel it. Low wing design attached at the bottom of the fuselage. Benefit being you can have retractable landing gear, which a lot of the other designs can't have unless they do like a retracting nose gear only. Or if it's all, I guess the F-16 had plenty of mid-wings had it, but they tend to pull
mid-wing
those,
has some.
Yeah, they tend to pull those up into the fuse or have like long landing gear. So these let the landing gear fold up into the wings with less ground clearance is the word I want to say.
Sure. Yep.
Landing gear doesn't tend to have to be as long. Aerodynamic profile, again, has the benefit of being able to be streamlined. And I guess you could argue could be, depending on how low you mount them, the bottom of the wing basically just ties right into the bottom of the fuse. So it's just, sort of a flat transition. Speed, again, built generally for higher speeds due to the reduced drag from streamline. A lot of military aircraft use them. They get high fuel efficiency due to reduced drag. Yeah, I said that right. Ground visibility becomes an issue with the mid and the lows. I didn't mention in the mids, but now you got the wings in the way of your view of the ground. But that does open up the top side for being able to view what's above and around you.
Yeah, I felt I was flying in a Piper, which is a low wing, but I'm training on the Cessna 172, which is a high wing. And so the 172, I always feel like I'm hanging out under the roof, of a low carport or something, right? And I can look out the window, I can see all the things on the ground, and I don't need to see a whole lot up. And that's what I can see up in front of me, which is fine. And I know stuff like the Piper Cub, they have a window directly above, so you can look straight up. But the Aztec and the other like low wing, if they oftentimes put the cockpit just at the front edge of the wing. So what you can do is you're looking out and you can see most of the ground in front of you, and you feel like you're standing on top of one of those, those big wheel bicycles that has one big fat wheel in the front and a little tiny one in the back.
I'm more thinking
like I'm on
the big wheel tricycles like you had when you were a kid.
Yeah, like that, but the really unstable bicycle versions where they have the giant wings or the giant wheels. Anyway, I feel like I'm in one of those when I'm in that plane. Like I'm kind of sitting out way on top of this thing, and I'm looking out. I'm not looking a whole lot behind me anyway, so that wing only partway gets in the way. But yeah, during landing, I know we were talking about one of the I can't remember what aircraft it was, but it had like Fowler flaps or a split flap where the bottom would come down, but oftentimes pilots wouldn't realize that it was down because they couldn't see it. It was a low wing, so
I remember us talking about that.
Yeah, and I think they had like a manual override on the thing, like they made a panel just so they could go back and fix it after everything was shut down. Like,
yeah.
And that was a big complaint because pilots would land with the flaps down and they wouldn't realize the flaps were still down after they shut everything down and left the plane,
Okay.
Yeah, so there's some things. Is there anything else you want to talk about that? Because I've got something else to. You might cover it, so I'll let you keep talking.
We'll see. So ground visibility, be able to look down becomes more problematic, which can be problematic when you're trying to see what's below you, but it does open up visibility for takeoff, taxi situations. An interesting side effect I didn't think about as part of this is low mounted wings can benefit from ground effect better than mid or high mounted wings.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, just
no, that's not all I had. So go ahead. About that.
And that's the thing is that a lot of the visibility issues aren't a thing with RC aircraft unless you're doing FPV in the cockpit. You make a mock pit,
right? And
you put your FPV gear in there or something. Otherwise, it doesn't really make a big difference. It's funny, we did the same thing at about the same time. I thought that was me. No, so with the ground effect takes effect is what is a wing. What is a wing width? That's how high you're in ground effect.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, I should know this. Shame on me.
Tell you what, keep talking. I'll look it up.
Okay, well, there's a certain height, right? Like it's a certain height. So, if it might even be I should know. I think it's the wingspan. That's when you're in ground
half its
effect,
wingspan.
Right? Half its wingspan. Okay, so that's the one. Okay, so you think about how high that is. Now, if you're in a high wing, you have much higher distance where you're in ground effect. Mm-hmm. Whereas a low wing, you're most of the way to the ground. You've already absorbed the fuselage width of that before you even get into ground effect. Get into that kind of cushioning effect that allows you to coast and until you lose enough speed and land.
Okay.
So it changes your landing, and that is important in RC Because when you're coming in a high wing, you're not going to hit that cushion to land smooth until you're almost hitting the ground.
Okay. I want to make sure.
Whereas in a high wing, you'll be in that cushion. You'll be in that cushion a lot longer. You'll be in there quicker.
A low wing, you'll be in it longer.
No, you won't. You'll be touching down before in a low wing than you will. Or sorry.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking the few. Okay. In a high wing like a Cessna, you're going to touch down earlier than you would with a fighter plane, like a low wing fighter plane.
Right. So with a high mount wing, you enter the ground. You enter the ground effect lower because wings are above you, so you got to descend a little bit more to get into the ground effect. Low mount wings, the wings hit the ground effect before you kind of hit that altitude, so you hit it a few feet earlier.
Right, which also that gives you more cushion to land in. It also may cause you to float a lot longer in a warbird, which you might not like if you're used to the high wing trainers. So when you're coming in and you go, oh, I got plenty and you come in and you're just like, oh gosh, this won't come down. And then you miss your runway. Now you got to come around, and that might be a factor. So think about it. That has an effect when you're an RC flyer, right? Like that's one of the things that you see, and it does play a real role.
Okay.
Anything else?
Examples of the low wing, the Boeing 737, most successful commercial jetliner with low wing design, per what I was reading. And then the Airbus A320 was also highly successful.
Nakajima, the Kate, B5N Kate is another low wing. Actually, a lot of fighters. And one of the other things, I think you may have touched upon briefly, but because the fuse is sitting on top of the wing, it causes it to be a little bit more unstable in roll, which is exactly what you want in a fighter. You want to be able to turn on a dime, whereas in a low slung trainer plane, you don't want the guy who's just learning how to fly to just twitch the stick and all of a sudden he's rolled over. You want it to be extra stable, whereas where the fuselage is on top of the wing, you basically are waiting for it to kind of tip over. I mean, it's not how it happens, but it's a lot more sensitive.
Some of that effect is still there.
Exactly. And that's desirable.
Where I brought up the pendulum effect for the high mount wing, the opposite applies with a low mount.
Right. And when you want a maneuverable, agile craft, that's what you need.
It does, but it's also why we incorporate flight computers into our fighter craft. Although we haven't always, but as we've gotten them, it helps because any amount of disturbance that would start or induce a roll with a low wing can cause the roll to continue.
Yeah, I think it's a different kind of instability in the modern day aircraft, but yeah, it started there though.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Is there anything else we should learn about wing placement and parts that it might affect?
I'm sure there are. That's sort of what I got. I got like a comparative analysis section, but it's going back over what we've talked about.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the thing you didn't touch on, and you don't need to as an RC flyer, like ground operations aren't really critical, right? Being able to access certain parts of the plane aren't critical. Like unless you're building a third scale something, that's probably not going to be a big play. Otherwise just, one of the things that might be fun, that's part of what I liked about some of the early planes that Flight Test had. They had one of the, and I'm trying to remember what it is, and probably somebody's yelling it out. They had, I want to say it was Tony the Explorer. I think the Explorer was set up so that you could make that high wing, and that's how it was originally set up, high wing pusher, right? But you
Right.
could move the tail section up and move the wing down low, and you could move the way it was configured. Like the front nose section was like the fuse, but you could kind of attach the tail in different spots and move the wing around a little bit and kind of test the different flight characteristics that different wings had.
That's kind of cool.
Yes, it's a pretty cool concept. So, if you ever get the chance, if you really you don't know how they all interact, you're probably going to start on a high wing trainer, but don't be afraid to try different wing placements, because it does affect how the plane flies, and it's pretty interesting. You might prefer one over the other.
Okay. What I know what mine would be. What would be your recommended low wing plane for somebody to try?
Oh, come on. It's the Spitfire. Come on.
Of course it's the Spitfire.
Of course it's the Spitfire. Although it might be the Kate. Jeez. If this thing flew so nice. For the 1.5 seconds it was flying solid.
Until the prop came off.
But anyway, time will tell. Next time we talk, I may be singing a different tune, but no, but the Spitfire is really good. Spitfire is just a solid plane. Honestly, that and the old Mustang.
I hadn't flown a Mustang.
No, but the P-51 was another one where it turned out it flew beautifully, and then the P-40 Warhawk, I think. I hope I'm not butchering that. That's another bird that's people love. And those three birds, I've heard nothing but positive reviews from them, from people who've flown. And it's the original flight test, and even just a full scale, like or not a full scale, but if you get like a scale model of it from name a maker, right? Those planes are all very popular, so you can probably grab it from anywhere. They all fly really well.
Well, remember the Mustang, while I guess you'd say it was probably a loved plane by the pilots, or we see it as a great plane, it got that way once it got the upgraded engine. That's what brought it into its own. So now that we've got, we're way overpowered for the planes that we're flying.
RC planes, you just cut your throttle to half, and that's probably what you, close to what you really have for a scale. But hey, I posted a picture of one of the two planes that survived.
I see that.
From the Pearl Harbor Museum. And yeah, there's almost nothing left.
There's nothing left, yeah.
It went through things.
That's interesting that it broke off right there at that.
The hinge.
Well, the hinge. I'm talking about that fuse section. That must have been some sort.
Well,
I guess that's where that was probably the firewall. Yeah, that's the motor.
Yeah,
mount.
that's a firewall, because you can see those two stubs in the front. That's actually where the motor mounts. That's one of the motor brackets.
Okay.
And then, what is it? You got the pilot. You got I guess right at the gunner is where it broke off. So basically the end of the wing, the back end of the wing. So, yeah. It's again, there's not many that survived. Literally there's two, and one is probably the better looking of the two, if I remember what the other picture looked like.
Yeah, that's not much to look at. I mean, it's cool, but it's oof.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, it's that's pretty bad. Like I said, so it's pretty cool. So anyway, I don't know. I appreciate everybody. If you're listening and you're still here.
Yeah, if you made it this far. We
really appreciate you listening to us kind of have a happy squirrel moment, and just, I don't know. I didn't expect to enjoy building and designing this plane and learning about it as much as I have. I'm really excited to see where it goes. And Joe, I really appreciate that you covered the wing placement category in as much detail as you did.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I thought when you started that statement, you were going to say you didn't expect to enjoy the segment as much as you did, but that's okay.
Wow, what a man.
The
So I
guilt
always like
trip.
what you do. You do such good stuff, man.
Yeah, I do all right.
Yeah.
All right. So, anything else major we want to talk about?
No, just a reminder that join us in the build party. Keep an eye
That's
out in
already
the
happened,
Discord.
but we got one
Yep.
coming in November.
But yeah,
Sometime.
and the next one. And we look forward to seeing you. And if there's anything you guys think you want to hear from us or want to know more about, I'm definitely looking straight down the barrel of hot wire foam cutting and possibly doing some composites.
Ooh.
I know we've got some Josh Finn. We talked, I think, a little while back about him building the world's biggest rubber band powered plane.
That
So
was
that's
literally last episode.
yeah, we talked about it last episode, and it's quite possible we are working to find out a little bit more about that. But if there's other things you'd like to know more about, especially just any of those categories, they're Greek to me. So if you want to know more about those too, send us questions we can ask.
What
Some
categories?
people about. Was it F1N, whatever the categories for that Aeronautic International Association, where they have all the different categories under the 5J3 and F. They're just, it's like Greek letters. I don't know. I feel like I'm not even speaking English, but there are different categories of free flight, powered flight, gliding, and a bunch of other categories. They're pretty interesting competition categories, which there's been some very, I'll call it high-tech solutions that come out of that. And some people doing some very interesting fine-tuning to some aircraft. It gets into some design stuff that you may not have to think about until you have to think about it for a competition.
Isn't that how it goes, though? You don't have to think about it until you do.
Until you do. And then you go, oh, what did I learn? I remember I learned that somewhere. I better pull up all that stuff. Well, cool. Joe, you want to close this out?
Yeah, let's see what we can do about that. Guys, as always, we thank you for tuning in and listening. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this conversation as much as Matt and I have enjoyed squirreling about and pretending we know what we're talking about. Feel free to reach out to us. We have a Facebook group that you can join. Although I really don't know that has much activity in it anymore these days. You can join us on Discord. The link will be down in the doobly-doo. Thank you, Matthew Coville. And join the Discord, hang out with us, see what's going on, chat with other guys. Really, the community here has a life of its own. Matt and I don't have to be in here every day. There's people talking and doing things, and it's cool to see what other people are doing. It can be very encouraging and motivating to get you going. You can email us, aviationrcnoob@gmail.com to reach out to both of us, or you can reach out to Matthew at aviationrcnoob.com, or you can reach me, Joe, at aviationrcnoob.com. Feel free to swing by our Patreon page, patreon.com/aviationrcnoob. If you want to become a patron and help keep the lights on and fund future ideas that may come out. Speaking of future ideas, we got to start solidifying what we're doing for next year Flight Fest. Yes, please. We have, I'll start putting more activity in that one. We have a FF 2024 big build ideas category in our Discord. If you've got something you'd love to see or want to hear what we've been talking about, get into that little subgroup there and let us know what you're thinking, or give us your thoughts on what we've come up with so far. Maybe we'll do a small segment next time on what the ideas are at the moment, and encourage people to give us one last group of ideas, because Joe and I want to get moving on it. We want to really start doing something pretty special with it. So the sooner we know what we're aiming for, the more interesting we can make it. So. Yep. And there's a couple people I need to reach out to regarding potential things for Flight Fest next year. So
Yep.
Hopefully, 2024 Flight Fest will be a big year for everybody, and we'd have a great time because that is 10 years of Flight Fest.
10 years. Whoop whoop.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that's everything, Matt. If you don't have anything else,
Nope. No more.
all right, guys. We will see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye. That wasn't bad.
That's a lot of ribs. I
Hmm?
had no idea. That's a lot of ribs.
Ribs.
I'm looking at the Cree plants.
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back,
Not
baby.
those ribs.
Sugar. Monomonot.
Do 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 do
Monomonot.
do 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 do
Monomonot.
do 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 do.
Now, excuse you, ma'am.